we check the WhatsApp and share those questions that we have.
Hello. Namaskar.
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 So can you just quickly explain us your connection with India and why you are traveling so much to India, right? Like, if you could just share your thoughts on that, that would be very helpful.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me here again. Actually, it was December last time we had something like this. And thank you for all the hospitality and arrangement you guys did for having me and having this amazing session. So what was the question about India? My connection with India.
Your connection with India, right?
Okay. Actually, I didn't know much about India up until I started working on the India GCC, Global Capability Center in Bangalore. Not in Pune, I'm sorry for that, but it was Bangalore. It was 5 years back during the COVID-19, actually around the end of COVID-19 period. And up until then, I had a sort of strong connections with Japan, of course, and as well as Silicon Valley in the US, because I have worked in US. I have worked for US companies for a long time, including Sun Microsystems in the past, and Google and Apple, and actually Sony. I was with Sony, and Sony has of course, a bunch of subsidiaries in the US. And I have worked with colleagues at Sony in the US as well. What I knew about India, that there are a bunch of engineers and product managers and designers and so forth from India and China in the US, right? And I actually worked very closely with engineers from India and the US. And I knew they are amazing. And actually at Google, I was working on Google Maps for some time. And actually, I think Google it was almost like more than 50 years ago. And I was in charge of some function of the Google Maps. And I believe we needed to deal with some specific problems with Google Maps in India. And we needed to, we had no idea how to address those things because we had no idea what kind of problems they are seeing with Google Maps for India at the time. And we actually had a sort of, meetings with, I think at the time, Google engineers in Hyderabad, I think. And we had a intense conversation with, some of those challenges they had. And for some reason, I needed to, my team, I needed to deal with those issues in India for some reason, because maybe at the time, Google India didn't have, engineers that can work on Google Maps. And from that experiences I had with them, I can clearly recognize the smartness and dedications and passions those engineers in Google India had, and that was really different from what I felt in the US actually, and in Japan. I was like, I knew that sometime in the future I'd like to work with them. If I have time, if I have an opportunity to do that. But fast forward to like 5 years back, and at the Mercari, which I worked for until like 2 years ago, I was a CTO of Mercari, and I needed to deal with non-technical and non-technical challenges within the company to enhance and to strengthen the capability of the engineering team. And we kept hiring from the world, not just from Japan. And Mercari is, by the way, a Tokyo-based company, which is sort of one of the Japanese unicorns. But we hit some limitations. We kept hiring, but not everybody can relocate to Japan. and we look at the organization, and we actually didn't aim for that, but we realized most of the engineers we hire from the world are people, engineers from India. And it was really, I don't know, just as a result, we had many engineers from India. So as we started thinking about how to strengthen our capability, engineering and product development capability, it was sort of natural to come to India to start, its own, Mercari's own, development teams. Actually, we will be talking about a building rather than just development. But yeah, we started GCC there. So actually, that was actually the first time for me to start coming to India. I actually never visited until I have never visited. I had never visited India before that, and I thought I knew about Indian mindset of engineers in India, but it was really different. I actually didn't know much about India. Yeah, of course, I know India in terms of food and culture and so forth, movies, and Bollywood, and etc., etc. But actually, didn't know about. I realized I didn't really know about, passion and dedications and focus those engineers in India have, and it was really eye-opening experience for me. I thought I knew, but I actually didn't know. And that's actually very true for many leaders, business leaders and engineering leaders in Japan. Even if they have some global experiences like in US and European countries, but it was really unknown. And I was just one of them. So that's why I started having, I was intrigued by, those strengths of Indian engineers. Yeah.
Just for out of curiosity, how many times have you traveled between India and Japan?
Yeah, actually, I stopped counting, but maybe I don't know, 30 times.
30 times.
Yeah, in like 5 years. Yeah, 4 to 5 years.
Super. So Ken, so what we will do is we will have a Q&A session where
Sure.
many people are asking on WhatsApp group.
Yeah, hopefully easy questions.
So what we will do is we'll ask one by one. The questions are not categorized. So you'll find some very technical questions, and there could be some general questions as well. So just be prepared for that. I think it's going to be very interesting questions. The first question that we have received from Ganesh is, as Gen AI models from many big and small players across the world are coming up with many advanced features, how should the enterprise look at them from the adoption perspective? As many companies are offering workflow based on solutions, it's interesting to note that not a single company can offer out-of-the-box solutions for any domain or enterprise. So, what are your thoughts on that, right? Like maybe, the question is quite big, but, I would request to keep the question a little small.
It's a big question. Yeah. Okay, so you're saying the question is asking about solutions that are coming from small players.
Right.
Yeah, and they are not very well integrated. Maybe that.
Right. So the Gen AI, right? Like models are there are several models, right? Like available. So how should enterprise look at them? Right, like which model to use, and I believe, right, like Ganesh. Who's Ganesh? If you would like to, explain that question in your words.
So how should they look at those models? Actually, I don't know why we should care about that at this point. We keep having models, right? From a frontier US frontier labs and maybe Chinese frontier labs, maybe some European maybe some other countries as well, and we still do not know what this will what I actually we still do not know when this will stop, or maybe it won't stop, but it will slow down.
Right.
So I think it's too early, in my view, to be worried about the models to choose from.
No, so the challenge and what I've seen, right, like the ROI part, right, like I mean, if you see when you start using the API calls, right, like the cost goes up. So in terms of right, like using small LLMs, I mean, there are a lot of stories, right, like about that, right, like you should use this type of models, that type of model. So what is your overall thought, right? Like I mean, should I mean, if you see like deterministic applications, right, like are very straightforward, where you have got right, like, but these are all indeterministic. So how enterprise should look at, and specifically, right, like I mean, if I have to see like companies of our size, how we should create moat or create some efficiency mode, right, like around that. How should we look at these models?
Models meaning like
large
language models. I think it's still, as I mentioned, it's there is no clear winners, and I don't think it's going to be like winner takes all situation. And it's more like really pluggable. When we talk about winner, the clear winner is NVIDIA, and that's pretty much it, right? All other players are really, or maybe I don't know, some hyperscalers are also getting, but they are actually buying. Sorry, I forgot to mention that Microns and Samsung and SK Hynix, those NVIDIA's and TSMC and those hardware layer players are clear winners at this point. But we still do not know how we can generate profit from this. And it's actually still unclear, and I think it's good because we just in my view, it's like we got a PC, or we got a first PC, we got a first smartphone, then we didn't know how to make the profitable business on top of we actually didn't know how to make a profitable business on top of PC. At the time, I think it was gaming and maybe some productivity suites, but it was unclear. And for the same goes for smartphone, and when we got a first ever iPhone, and actually we didn't know the killer applications.
Right.
Maybe Apple had some music player, that's pretty much it, and phone and browser, and they didn't even have an app store when they launched the first iPhone. So at the time, actually we didn't know how to make a profitable business on top of them. And I think that this is the current, the AI is new, in my view, like a toy, in my view. I like gadgets and I like toys, and PC was a toy, and World Wide Web was also some outcome. The internet itself was actually military based. It was created by U.S. military, and World Wide Web was invented by some researcher in Switzerland, right? And smartphone was sort of so it was unclear. It was just they created those technologies like foundational technology, a new categories of products. Just because they wanted to do. And AI is the same. Actually, I current LLM was actually I have some friends at Google because I used to work for them, and they came up with a very epoch-making paper. Like attention is all you need, right? And attention that transformer model was actually as one of the results of machine translation research. So they actually didn't think about generative AI. It was just translation, machine translation, and they came up with, they tried many ideas and so forth to make the machine translation better. But I don't know. But as a result, and my point is, we don't know. So it's too early to think about it. The initial application was just a machine translation.
Right.
Yeah.
But which one is, which toy is favorite, right? Like for you right now, which one do you use the most out of all the
AI models?
Yeah.
I don't know. I use both of them, right?
Okay.
I use Anthropic models and OpenAI models, and actually I also have a Mac Mini at my at home, and I run, because I have time. So I'm sort of independent now, so I have time. I am running, those local LLMs like GPT OSS, and from Google they have Gemma 4.3, and back then Meta released Llama, and of course Chinese models still Clang, and DeepSeek is a little too big, for Mac Mini. Yeah, I use everything.
Excellent, excellent. So, one follow-up question from Ganesh is, if you could see, right, like solopreneurs, right? Like right now, the concept is like everyone is talking about that. You don't need team members. You can create, right, like your own company.
Right.
Now you meet a lot of companies. You meet a lot of people. You meet a lot of smart people as well. What is your take on it? Because everyone is talking about it, and the creating code, creating application is democratized now, right?
So one person unicorn, right?
One person unicorn, and right, like what do you think? I mean, and if you have, right, like any ideas for our audience, right, like where we should focus on to create that unicorn, and give some stakes to you. I mean, we'll be happy to.
Well, it's a beautiful question. Well, I think it's possible in some domains, some business domains,
Such as,
I don't know, maybe some tools for developers, or some, I don't know, selling some products and services to someone really technical. They like engineers, like, I don't know, analysts, or like, I don't know, some experts, right? Some researchers. They can take care of problems by themselves. They don't need that much support. They can address. They can fix their problems by themselves. So, and that's one of the things. Yeah, OpenClaw is one of them, right? OpenClaw is. Have you are you guys running? How many people here are running OpenClaw? Right. And actually, it's more or less. Well, it started as a solo one-person project, right? And yeah, they have a bunch of developers, engineers that are working on, OpenClaw as an open source. But it started as a one-person project, and why it worked? Because they targeted very tech-savvy users, and they didn't, target. Well, actually, it was just an open source project, but it was no business. But it got a big success because they didn't care about. They didn't target ordinary people. They actually targeted very technically strong people. So that is probably one of the domains. Solopreneurs, solo unicorns, possible.
Okay.
Yeah. But the market is niche in my view. So the market is developers, engineers, builders are still, we don't have that many builders in the world, right? Maybe, I don't know, millions. That's it.
Right. No, this is good. And we have a next question from Sachin, and this is quite related to the solopreneur question. So, or perhaps, right, like the companies that have services. So, if you see in India, we have a lot of IT services companies. Now, technology now increasingly becoming commoditized, especially if you see managed services or areas, right, like that are primarily rule-based. And if you see if these areas are getting commoditized, what do you think, right? Like, and based on your research, right, what do you think, right, like would be the sustainable competitive advantage for the IT services companies in India? What they can do?
It's a profound question. I don't know. So you're talking about vendors, right? Vendors like
vendors, right? Like IT vendors, right?
Like for instance, Infosys and Wipro
And small companies also,
small
right? Like
companies
there are
as
a
well.
lot of small companies also. And maybe we can focus on small companies because the other big companies, they have consultants helping them. So
Right. I don't know. It is going to be tough, definitely, for them. So yeah, as you mentioned, as the question mentioned, those development part are now pretty much democratized, and it's you just need to uh, pay for the subscriptions and those models, and we have a bunch of tools to build a prototype. So I don't know. So as we talked, as building is it's not just about development. Building and maintaining and keeping it running, and actually dealing with customers' requests and maybe customers' complaints, etc. Can be one of the domains, one of the areas those service providers can take in, can tap into.
right.
So it's going to be more like customer success.
Right.
Yeah, in on behalf of the company, but I don't know. But it's tough because most of the companies are really, they are really those dealing with customers is one of the important activities and actually it actually a core of the business, right? So I'm not really sure if they are okay with outsourcing that part to some other vendors. So sorry, I have no clear answer to
Right.
to see those.
I mean, would it be helpful, right, like to build some solution? I mean, what I've seen that, and this was something that you also spoke the other day, right? Like maybe companies can start creating their own IP, right? Like for the products. I mean, currently, if you see, we primarily focus with the services mindset. So if there is any specific area where we could just, right, like create some kind of a licensing model, or do you think, right, like there could be some benefits with that process?
So in general, people are talking about labor intensive business versus a asset incentive based business. I think, yeah, and actually, in my understanding, those service providers or IT vendors in India are pretty much labor intensive, and that part is well, at least when it comes to software development, labor-intensive solution will never win against, AI-driven, development. I don't know. If that's the case, if you really need to keep running the business that is labor-intensive, something physical maybe, where robots, smart robots it will take some time. They're coming, but it will take some little more time to build a hardware to make it work. So if you try to stick with labor intensive business,
Eventually,
it should have something to do with hardware or maybe physical things.
Right. But over the 5 to 10 years, right? Like, I mean, the question also is, right? Like, what do you think, right? Like, would happen? Let's say, right? Like all these big IT companies. I mean, for example, in Japan, if you see Nomura Research, right? Like Nomura Research, NTT, right? Like, I mean, all these companies. What would happen after 5 to 10 years? I mean, do you think that these companies will become even more leaner and
that's actually a little complex question because of the system Japan has. As you may know, there is especially for those big banks and so forth, they have a hierarchical outsourcing structure.
right?
They outsource the work to a tier one vendors.
Right.
And tier one vendors will outsource
Right.
their work to tier two vendors. And
Right.
tier two vendors outsource their work to tier three vendors. And it's like, it's really a solid, well, I don't know if it's the right word, a solid and very well established, very well established structure.
Right.
So it's not about technology, at least in Japan. At
Right.
least for Japan, it's more like it is actually related to social stability. they are employers that are actually helping many people's life.
Right.
And that part is still, I think, is still hard to change, and it will still continue. So to answer the question, Nomura and NTT, there are Fujitsu and NEC, those big tier one service vendors, IT vendors, will not die anytime soon. Not because of the technology, because of the social things, because of the I'm not an expert of that thing, but as I have been helping some big vendors, big enterprises as well, and they are outsourcing most of their work, most of the system work, most of the engineering work to vendors, like tier one vendors. And it is super solid,
Right.
as you know, as some of you know. I don't think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
To be honest, it should go away.
Yes.
It was sometimes it will stay. It will here to stay. Yeah, then you can take advantage of the system
Inefficiency.
For inefficient, those hierarchical and outsourcing chain. Good or bad, but that could be a good business, at least for like 5 to 10 years.
Okay, got it. So this is very good. So just to elaborate, right? Like the point in Japan, the systems work very differently. Where there are multiple layers of vendors, and they have already decided vendors from perhaps 5, 10, 20 years as well. Sometimes.
And they don't change vendors. Either,
Right.
They have built the trust between those enterprises to tier one, tier one to tier two, tier three, tier two to tier three, and they are very well, they trust.
Right.
There are some trust.
Yes.
Good or bad.
Right.
They know each other very well.
No, this is very interesting because when we are, we have maybe 30, 40, 50 or 100 size team members, maybe we can focus on such systems where these systems are there and getting into those systems and trying to see, at least for foreseeable future, we'll be able to connect.
But just to be clear, I'm not a big fan of the system, right? I'm not saying this is good.
Yeah, but one of the ways, right?
Yeah, because this is actually the reality we are seeing in Japan, and it is actually bad for Japan in my view, and it is actually having a really negative effect to the competitiveness of those businesses actually.
Ken, we have many, we don't have just IT companies in the room, right? We have got a lot of other businesses also in the room. So when we are planning to shift from developer to builder, what is one thing that we have to unlearn, and can you also share, what your thoughts are on other markets and how they could actually leverage, this AI wave?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this, for a while, and the biggest differences between being a builder and being a developer and being a builder is that, in my view, how much details you understand about the customers or requirements and challenges, and if I can overgeneralize things, a developer is the one that are waiting for something to do, right? And they're waiting for someone will tell him or her to do this. And on the other hand, a builder is all about proactively identifying the issues and problems and come up with actions to address that issue or that problems or whatever that can be improved. So developers are basically passive, and a builder is a proactive. I hope this answers the question.
No, so this is great. But with if you have to think about the other industries, so developer and builder, the concept is now clear, right? Like developer is someone who waits for the instruction. Where builder is someone, if you're working with any other companies or as a vendor, you are when you are a builder, you think from that company's perspective and take the decisions, and that's how the GCC term has also emerged, right? Where you are not just cost center for the company, you are building something which is meaningful for the company, and you are helping to grow that company as well and take decisions from the GCC part. But when we think about other businesses, so for example, we have some tourism experts over here, someone from the architectural field, or someone from who is creating packs, premium packs over here. So if you have to think about all these sectors, how do you think AI? I mean, how they can leverage AI and create their competitiveness? I mean, how should they look at AI? I mean, if you could just share your thoughts on that.
So the question is domains.
Domains, yeah, different domains, right? Different domains, not IT domain, right?
Well, pretty much all domains, I would say. Finance and legal, manufacturing, agriculture, and everything. I think. So, what would be the what does this question want us to?
So how they should leverage, right? So if they are generally, if you see, they are using applications, right? For example, for distribution, they are using Instagram or YouTube or some advertisements. They are, for example, for communication, they have been using WhatsApp. So what changes that they need to make so that they will be able to leverage this AI wave? Small scale companies.
As everybody is saying, there are two aspects in order to we're simplifying things. AI can make your work more efficient, right? It's more about cost savings or cost optimization. Right. That is simple one, and everybody does, and everybody should do, if not yet, because it's a simple thing. But on the other hand, everybody, all companies are talking about, except NVIDIA and Samsung. We really need to find how to create more revenues, by taking advantage of AI as an underlying technology. And it's still unclear, to be honest. Even, for instance, at Mercari is eBay of Japan, in a sense. Misho is I think you guys have consumer to consumer marketplace. And Mercari has always been trying to adopt AI to make user experience more smoother and more frictionless, etc. But we have never, well, at least in my understanding, we haven't been able to quantify the revenue increase or profit. I don't know. Not profit. It's some. Yeah, we of course keep monitoring the product KPIs, the product metrics, but it was not. We were not able to justify or identify or quantify the actual revenue increase by adding this function.
Right.
Of course, we get good, positive reactions and positive reviews from some customers, but actually it's unclear. It
Right.
has been unclear. And even after came out, actually I left my career 2 years ago, so it was not really. But they are still trying, to make their user experience better by taking advantage of AI. Like you are listing. If you'd like to sell something, you'd like to list your items, just like you do with eBay, and it should be as frictionless as possible. And by taking advantage of AI, you don't need to write, you don't need to type the description of your listing, and you just need to take photos, and photo will be automatically be better.
So optimizing efficiency, right? Like efficiency, right? Like could be something.
Efficiency, but I don't know. I hope this but each business domain still needs to figure out the killer functions, the killer features.
Right.
And in my understanding, we haven't found any killer applications of AI yet. Well, there are some, like Cloud Code is one of them, but Cloud Code is still like two, right?
Right.
So that's something. Yeah, and we don't have, let's say, in my understanding, we don't have Uber of AI. We don't have Airbnb of AI yet. This is my understanding, to consumers, to ordinary.
So there is one very interesting question, about geopolitics. So if you see, right, like Claude people, right, like was recently revoked by U.S. government. How, like, what is your take on it? If we start becoming dependent on any models, and tomorrow, right, like if that model is revoked by due to the geopolitical risk, how do you see that?
So I think this question is asking about sovereign AI.
Sovereign.
I don't know how I don't know how I can answer the question. Well, sovereign AI is needed, I guess, from the government perspective. But realistically speaking, you need money. You need huge investments to build a sovereign AI. Only US and China, in my view, can do that. Maybe France is doing something, in Korea, Japan is doing something, but it's much, I think, hidden. There's a huge gap between US and China and those countries. I don't know, maybe open source, like open weight models, can be one of the fun. Actually, most of those open models, like sovereign AI, are usually based on open weight models at this point, and some of the some models are really purely. Some models are not based on those Chinese models.
Right.
It's not maybe GPT OSS and so forth. But it's still I don't know. Time will solve it. Right? Once from the AI, those frontier models, the advancement of those improvement of those frontier models will slow down at some point in the future. When that happens, I think all those open models will be available, and actually, I think that can be foundations of those sovereign AIs, and actually, they might not be the best, not frontier. The state may not be the state of the art, but that's probably good enough. So and time will solve.
This is very helpful. So what we'll do, right, like now, Ken, we have one more now session from PwC. We'll have, right, like that 30-minute session. Thank you so much. What we'll do, there are a lot of questions that we need to answer. So we are going to have, Javier and you both, right, like after this session, PwC session, and if you could just answer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you.